Hey guys! Okay, so today we're going to be talking about picture styles. These are quite interesting because I don't think everybody really understands how they work, and they're quite a lot of times are quite fooled by them, and they think they're seeing things that they're not, and that's not the best. But anyway, before we go into my preferences and which one I like to use the most, I think it's important that we know how a camera system actually works, because you'll see much better how a picture style will really affect your final image. So if you think about light and information, the first thing that they hit of your camera system is the lens. And this is actually why it's so important to have a great lens before you have an amazing sensor, because if you have a great lens, loads of information will be able to pass through. If you've got a terrible lens, it's as if you've got some filter paper that is just not letting through that nice, interesting detail. It's just letting through the simple, big bits of information. It's not very nice. So yeah, get a good lens before you get a good sensor. But apart from that, the second thing it hits is the sensor itself. And basically the sensor's job is to transfer the analog information of the light into digital, and it will assign different pixels to that information. The better it is, the more pixels it will be able to assign, and the more resolution it will have. The next part of the system is the processor, and this is where the picture style comes into play, because the processor basically is what compresses the file from the sensor to your SD card or whatever card you're using. And compression of video files is quite an extensive topic, but basically the original file that comes straight out of the sensor is the raw file, and you might have heard this before. This is basically the highest quality you will get out of your sensor. It basically is taking pretty much all the information that has come through the lens, and it just looks beautiful, and that is what professional people use and what professional cameras use. However, the cheap cameras don't really have the ability to shoot RAW, and if they did, I think Magic Lantern can make you shoot RAW on like cheap Canon cameras. However, you can only shoot 5 seconds, and you would need a massive computing power, massive storage space. It's just really not practical for the no-budget filmmakers. So we have to think about compression, and they will do it internally inside the camera. What it used to be is that the resolution would be compressed. So you'd have a 1080p image out of the sensor, and then it would be compressed into a 480p image, and that would just decrease the file size, which it did. However, people didn't like that. They wanted a much higher resolution picture. So the only way to have that is to just decrease the color information of the image. So the color and the kind of luminancy information. And this has its drawbacks because the color will look not very vibrant. It will look, and there's not that much detail anymore in the image, although there will be those pixels. There will be that resolution, but not the actual detail in the image itself. So this is quite important, and the picture style is what will dictate to the processor what parts of the image from the sensor to keep and which parts to lose. A standard picture profile usually would keep a lot of information in the midtones and would lose information in the highlights, where they would be completely blown out, and in the shadows, which will be crushed. Instead, flat picture profiles, namely Cinestyle, which everybody loves, it's the big new thing, would keep information in the highlights and in the shadows. However, it would lose information in the midtones, and I'll get onto that later. So the thing about Cinestyle is that it's not true dynamic range. I mean, you put it onto the camera, it looks amazing, it looks like you're looking into an Alexa, it just looks so much latitude. Oh my god, this is finally the chance of getting a cheap camera, making it look incredible. But sadly, it's really not true dynamic range. What that means is that it's taking the dark parts of the image and it's raising the ISO so that you will have detail. That means there are going to be loads of noise in the dark parts of the image. Obviously, this is lessened if you've got a better camera, like a 5D, that is quite good in low light, then that will be less. But still, they will have some nasty grain, and it just doesn't look that professional. Also, the highlights, if they're clipped, they're clipped. It's not as if it's decreasing that amount, which a real camera would do, like an Alexa. It's just letting it clip and then decreasing it digitally. So what you will have is gray patches of clipped highlight, which looks awful. And also, it's losing information in the midtones on top of that. So you're going to have a very noisy shadow, not much resolution in the midtones, and kind of patchy, blown out highlights, which looks really weird. I mean, if you know how to light a scene, which is very important, you will get some good results. But it's really not real dynamic range, which everybody thinks it is. So, yeah. I came across this picture style made by this guy called Paul. I don't remember his surname. But it's called Cinema, and it costs, I think, about $10. And it's really, really good. It's really worth it. And it's quite contrasty. Less contrasty than, let's say, a standard, but nowhere near as flat as Cinestyle. And it's really good because it keeps lots of information and detail in the shadows and in the highlights, however, while keeping a contrasty image. So it's not raising anything using ISO, it's not trying to digitally unclip highlights, it's keeping that detail in there, but keeping a nice, already contrasty image. On the website, it's kind of presented as this kind of easy to use, kind of for beginners, and it's just something that you use and then you don't need to color grade or something like that, but I disagree with that. I think it's a really good profile to use professionally because it makes you think about lighting to get as flat an image as possible, but while maintaining lots of detail throughout that flat picture. And also it's got quite a sharp image, which in Cinestyle it's kind of blurry and it's very difficult to bring it back in post. So it really has lots and lots of positives. There's pretty much no grain in the dark spots when even at quite high ISOs. I don't know how it does that, but it's amazing. So I definitely recommend using Cinema, not Cinestyle, although it costs a little bit. It's really, really worth it. If you take a look at the scene here, in fact, you can see in the Cinestyle here, the stones are losing loads and loads of detail, and because those are the midtones. There's really, you pretty much lost everything in the stones. It just looks like a big soup of kind of beige. It's awful. And also the grass is kind of mushy. And in the garage, there's lots of noise. There's, although you can see that chair in there, there is lots of noise and it just looks ugly. In the cinema, instead, it looks quite nice. It's quite contrasty, it's quite dark, but there's lots of, much less noise and lots of details in those rocks in the midtones, and it just looks quite nice. Much more professional. Instead, if you take a look at this scene here, you can see with Cinestyle, Cinestyle is seeing all that black in the image behind the character, that it's just saying, oh my god, we cannot have so much darkness there. We need to rise it. So they pump up the ISO like crazy in those dark parts, and it just floods it with noise. So it's just trying to get the exposure right, and it's failing miserably. Instead, if we go to the cinema accepts that darkness and actually presents quite a nice image, which having the skin tones well exposed and having quite a dark background, which is actually quite cinematic. And if you put some lights in there, you can have lots of detail behind there as well, which you can darken in post. So it really is much better. I definitely recommend it. However, if you guys know about any other picture styles that maybe you've made or have got some defenses against Cinestyle, please drop a comment below. I'd like to hear about that. And if not, then see you next time.